everybody, it's Dr. Rimka, and I'm super excited about my guest today. I don't know Danielle Rubio super well, but she worded something so eloquently that it instantly stopped the scroll, spiked my cortisol, grabbed my attention, drew me in with more dopamine, with so much curiosity. But the way she explained how she helps people regulate their nervous systems and try to teach them the connection, like you can't outthink your way from stress and trauma, something that's held unconsciously in the body. This is the language I speak with my patients all the time. And anytime I can bring somebody else in that I can learn from and you can learn from, and you can eavesdrop on two clinicians maybe having a conversation back and forth, I want to do that. So I'd like to introduce you to Danielle Rubio out of California. And I'd love you to tell them who you are, how you got into doing this type of work. Because those of us who do this, there's always a story, either your own stress and trauma or somebody you deeply love, or all of it together. And then we'll go back and forth into like philosophy, and we may agree on everything, disagree here or there, but how you use your unique understanding of the nervous system to help your clients overcome anxiety and PTSD and depression and things of that nature.
Sure. Yeah. Well, thank you for having me in this conversation. And I'm a nervous system educator. So I work primarily with helping people to regulate the nervous system. And I'll go into a little bit of what that means. And I'm a somatic trauma coach. So essentially, I'm helping people overcome their trauma and ditch anxious, chronically stressed, and depleted for good. And why it's for good is because we're actually going to the root, which is your nervous system. That's the software system of who you are. And how I got into this. So I had already been a healer. I was a Reiki master. I was a yoga teacher. I was a meditation teacher for many years. At this point, it was probably 14 years. And I experienced my own traumatic event about 7 years ago. And nothing under my belt was touching it. I had severe PTSD. I ended up with severe insomnia because of my extreme anxiety. And I was really at this breaking point of I'm a healer and I can't heal myself. Like what's going on? You name it, I've done it from a very early age. And it was like nothing was touching this anxiety and this PTSD. And I had one day, by the grace of God, where I just, I remember I was sitting on my kitchen floor, just a wreck. And I was like, you know what? This is not how I go down. And I got up and I just started researching online, and I happened to come across trauma work. I came across the work of Gabor Mate, Peter Levine, these pioneers in somatic therapy, so body-based therapies to work with trauma and to heal trauma. And it was like a light bulb went off. And I was already pretty privy to this stuff. I was a yoga teacher, so I had also studied dance therapy. So I knew the body held this wisdom, but I didn't know really anything about the nervous system and how the best ways to work with your nervous system is through body-oriented modalities. So
I'm going to pause you for a second, because for the listener, that all sounds, I understand everything you just said. And for the average person maybe watching out there who's anxious or has PTSD, is dealt with exactly what you just said. That's a million people, like easily in America. And what she's saying that is so different outside of the scope of traditional talk therapy. All of those modalities are cognitive in nature. And what she's saying is, I knew it, like I had a thinking of what to do here, but her body really didn't know what to do exactly until, and it's a love that you actually took a cognitive approach, because it's exactly what I do. I research and I know how to do that. Let me make my left brain find what I need to find. And through studying these other people who are really avant-garde in their thinking, to say, because the neuroscience is backing this up now, but it isn't the mainstream way of thinking, that the body, the soma, the somatic physical body, is what's actually containing the solution. It's the problem in the solution because it's storing it. And so you can't solve a body problem with the mind, with cognition. So what you're saying, so that's the thing where it's like, oh, these things, everything I tried, that's because it's the wrong approach, and all of therapy has done it. So for people, if you've tried therapy or whatever, and I'm not saying therapy's bad, it has its place, but you can't actually go to the cognitive part of it until we get the underlying autonomic nervous system regulated. And that is only through the body because it's unconscious and involuntary. Okay. So there's the distinction. So there's like these two big pathways when it comes to like mental health and recovery. And you have the talk cognitive behavioral theory thinking, kind of CBT and other things like that. And then you have the body oriented group of people. I think they all have a time and place, but if I have to always choose, I'm going to go with the body, the soma, because these are unconscious. This is not stinking thinking. This is a physical reality that your body is overwhelmed, and it has a physical depletion in it, a physical change. So I wanted them to hear that just said like very simply. All right, so keep going.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And something that I tell my clients is, stress is physical. It starts from the nervous system sensing some sort of threat. And historically, your nervous system has evolved over hundreds and hundreds of thousands of years. It's the same nervous system we've always had. And historically, the stresses of the nervous system were like catching a prey or fighting a predator or territorial fights. And so our stresses are very different in just a very sliver of human evolution, but the nervous system is the same. And so your nervous system, which is of the body, is going to sense a particular threat or stress or danger. And then that's going to send all the signals throughout the rest of the body, chemical responses, sending the signals to the brain in how to respond to that stress. So essentially, I deep dove into all of this. I ended up healing my PTSD. I healed the insomnia. And that's when I had already been a teacher and a guide and a healer. And I knew, okay, I need to train in this because this is the missing piece. For me, it really felt this is the missing piece to truly help people heal from trauma and to be able to create absolute emotional regulation so they're not at the whims of these triggers anymore. And you said it so beautifully. There's a place for talk therapy. There's a place for these more mental and cognitive therapies, but they're not going to get to the root. And this is why people are spending like decades in talk therapy and they're not getting anywhere because they're not addressing the nervous system.
Yeah. They aren't even there. To me, they're often furthering the dissociation and furthering the disconnection from the body. We have to get back into the trauma is a dissociation out of the senses, out of the feeling. And all the somatic work is bringing that back in. And so you have to, like, I do a whole talk on the autonomic nervous system body map of it, right? And it's, yeah, you're going to have to feel things. And when you're numbed out, that helps the pain. So some people, you were vacillating in like high stress to like state 3 trauma, you'd go back and forth, hot and cold. And that can be really uncomfortable. But like real big dissociation is total numbness, right? Like, I don't know, it's just flat, numb, no pain. So sometimes to reverse the healing, you got to heal it to feel it, that whole cliche, but it's so true. And but these somatic therapies, and there's so many modalities, and people always ask, what's the best one? I'm like, the best one that is the one that is divinely inspired right in front of you. And it's easy, convenient, you're compliant. Like I have the ones that I like that I'm certified in and do, but there's so many. And so I don't like to say this one's better than this or whatever. There's more out there than I know I'm aware of. So technique you might be certified in and not the technique I'm certified in doesn't matter. We attract who you're attracted to her, you work with her. You're attracted to me, you work with me. Him, you work with him, right? Some people need to be, and the gender of the therapist is very important often. I have many people that are like, I'm not working with a man. There's no way, because that was where the trauma came from. Yeah. I have many people that I need the man, I need the father. They need that safety. So it's trust that. And when you said, which I thought was so beautiful, I was like, oh, my nervous system loved it. You told people it wasn't their stinking thinking. It's like your nervous system just senses it. Like your inner knowing knows And so your body has a response. It's not stupid. So I find the statement I say the most eventually to somebody that is the most powerful thing I'll ever say to a patient. It happens at some point. You're not crazy. And they're like, and it just becomes this whole moment. I'm like, you're not crazy and you're not broken. Like the nervous system isn't making a mistake. It's
Yeah.
sensing something that's not good, even if your conscious mind isn't, I don't understand why I'm feeling like this. It just comes out of nowhere. No, that's not actually your body is not deranged. So you said that without saying it that way. And I was like, I love
Mm,
that because I have to spend so much time. I'm sure you do too. You're not
mhm.
broken. You're not unhelpable. You're not unfixable. This isn't hopeless because I think the traditional models tell them that in so many different ways.
Yeah.
This is a condition. You have this label for life. You need this thing for life. This is how you are. This is your chemistry or whatever,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And you said exactly the opposite. You said the genius of your nervous system knows it's just you might not understand the language it's speaking because it's not a lion chasing you right now.
And that's what something that I tell my clients a lot is first we need to accept the messages that your body's sending you, the signals your nervous system is sending you. And then we also need to honor it because like you said, the nervous system is not making a mistake. The nervous system is simply sensing you're in danger. Anxiety, for example, is the symptoms of being in a flight response of the nervous system. Your body's trying to keep you alive. Your body is sensing I'm in danger. And so it's like honoring, okay, like I'm listening, I'm honoring. We get into a lot of trouble when we start to try to numb, we start to try to avoid what we feel. We want to like Netflix our way out of it or drink our way out of it or do these other things to avoid feeling rather than simply listening to the cues. Now, yes, of course, the nervous system is dysregulated. So it's sounding the alarms. It's stuck in sounding the alarms. So you're experiencing this anxiety all the time. But the first step is like that acceptance. And okay, I'm listening now to your body. Like we're in this together. I'm not going to continue to try to just push you down and think my way out of this.
Yeah. So what's the most common process you see your clients going through? And about how long does it take? Like, how do you take them through the journey with you?
That depends. You mean the process of the healing process?
Mhm. Yeah, somebody comes
Well,
to you, okay, I'm anxious. I don't know. I saw you on this thing. What
yeah,
can you help me?
yeah, yeah. So it depends what specifically they're going through. So I specifically work with women, and I have women who are coming to me with some women are very frozen. They're very stuck that way. Some women are more depressed. Some women are more anxious. The first step is always we have to reestablish that connection to the body. And so I use a method I created, which is the embodied life method. And it's a weaving of nervous system regulation, movement therapies, somatic inquiry, and mindfulness. And the reason mindfulness is there is exactly what you said at the beginning is I want their anchor to be that they are not broken. And the basis of who they are, their truest identity is perfect and pure and it is not tainted by everything they've been through, by their traumas, and not even tainted by a dysregulated nervous system. We simply have to rewire. And we know even science is catching up to this with neuroplasticity. We can rewire the nervous system. We can create these new pathways, and it all starts with establishing safety. So I'm working with women to first establish this sense of safety and really giving them this visceral experience that they are safe. And so we're doing that through various different movement practices or different somatic practices. And it varies with each woman because everybody is so different in where they're at.
So by nervous system regulation practices, can you give me, and I know what I do,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm a huge fan. I use a lot of electromagnetics. I'm board certified in neurofeedback and biofeedback. And so I do very quick, direct changes to a nervous system well beyond, I find the majority of clients that come to me
Mhm.
Box breathing ain't cutting it. Never was cutting it. We don't have the time for that, and it just doesn't do it. Some people, there's a lot of these amazing techniques that work for this chronic mild state one stress, but in
Mhm.
different states it doesn't do as much. So I'm curious as to what are some of the things you're teaching women for nervous system regulation, because that's just a term. Some people hear it all the time and they don't like, what does that mean? What do you do? What are you doing? What are you having them do? Because some people love
Yeah,
whatever what
yeah.
you do.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it might even be helpful for your listeners. I define nervous system regulation is because we're dealing with the autonomic nervous system. It's automatic. So everything's happening automatically. And in a healthy nervous system, your nervous system will go into fight or flight or freeze, but then it's going to automatically get back to rest and digest, back to a thriving state. A dysregulated nervous system is a nervous system that's faulty. It's getting stuck in a fight or flight or freeze. It's stuck because of trauma. And I define trauma as anything that's overwhelmed the nervous system. So it's not necessarily the event. A lot of people say, I don't have trauma because they're thinking it's like this big T trauma. Trauma is simply something that overwhelmed the nervous system. And so when you're a little one, it could be something as a lot of little cuts, like a lot of neglect or having parents that weren't there. Your nervous system is going to sense that as this is unsafe, and thus it's going to become dysregulated if this is continuing to happen over time. So again, in regulation, it's establishing the safety. So one practice that I give pretty much everybody, that no matter where they're at, is a practice of orienting, which is, if you think about a deer in the wild and you observe, or any animal, they're exploratory orienting. So they're grazing, they're looking around, they're orienting with their five senses. They're safe in the nervous system. As soon as they sense a danger, they're going to look very different, right? They're tunnel visioned, they're still, they're in one direction. People have become stuck in this like defensive orienting. And by doing the exploratory orienting, which is, it's essentially, I'm leading people through a practice of being with their five senses, which can only ever be right here in this moment. It's sending the signal that they're safe. So it's sending the signal to the nervous system, like you're safe. You're just exploring, orienting with the surroundings.
So you haven't see three things or touch like that kind of thing, or what?
It's
I'm telling you, the listeners, I don't know what she just said.
yeah, yeah.
I'm
So
very much talk to me like I'm a 5-year-old.
yeah, yeah. So to almost like lead listeners through it, it's like I'll start with, okay, let's start with your sense of touch. Can you drop into the sense of touch? Feel your body connected to the chair that you're on. Feel the clothes touching your skin. Sense everything that you're sensing with your sense of touch. Don't let yourself analyze it. There's no need to analyze. You're just feeling. Just feel in your sense of touch. And then we move into hearing.
Okay. So you
You know.
verbally talk them through
Mm-hmm.
a full orientation. Okay.
Yeah, so I'll talk them through and then get them doing this every day. It's one of many exercises. This is probably the only exercise that I'm giving to everybody, whether they're like frozen or they're in a fight mode or they're in a
You
flight mode.
do you give them a recording of that, or do you do it once and then they know how to do it? Okay, so that's usually not a thing they can just learn how to do.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. So in my program, like I'm doing everything in sessions with them, but then I'm often recording a lot of these practices because people are so
yeah. Oh no,
busy
you need it. And
and they need
orienting
this.
to me, that process, I do that too. I think it's a form of self-hypnosis. Because
Mm,
I think you can drop people into that beautiful alpha state with that. Because presence is alpha, right? It's
mhm,
pure alpha presence. You cannot, if you're have alpha, you're the present. That's it. Power of now is that. And
mhm,
it's not deep meditation like theta, but it
mhm,
is that state. And so I've experienced that myself. I do self-hypnosis.
mm.
I was 18, 19 years old, and it reminds me of that when I'm like, sometimes I'm like, I don't even know what just happened. Like, where was I? Like, I knew, but I was there, but not. And because it's so present, it's timeless.
Yeah.
So that's interesting, but it does have that self-hypnosis feeling. So for some of you who are into that's what that is. But it's funny because I find a lot of clinicians don't do that. And it's a simple process. I don't know if it's just because it's time consuming kind of ish. I think it's undervalued, honestly. Like I think breath
Yeah.
work is undervalued too, just in general.
Mm,
Like I know I've undervalued it. Oh man, I really gotta bring more breath work it back into it because I get so fancy.
yeah. Yeah.
Like just that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. That's good. Because I wanted them to know because people just don't, they hear nervous system. What is she talking about? And sometimes it sounds really complicated. That did not
Well,
sound complicated, but they just don't
right.
know what it means. I don't want them to be intimidated by words that they just don't understand.
Yeah, and another point I can make that can help them understand is it's also so it's about allowing the nervous system to complete processes that it couldn't complete. So if you think about when you were a little one and you were scared in some way and your nervous system naturally went into fight or flight. So it's not bad to be in fight or flight or freeze. We have to be in these states.
Have to, yeah.
Yeah,
It keeps you alive. Yeah.
exactly. But say that kid was in fight or flight and something stopped that, either a parent that was abusive that told that child to shut up, or something even more mild where that child got the message of, I can't be in this fight or flight. I can't speak up and fight for something I want, or I can't flee this situation because I'm not going to survive without my parents. So then they go into a shutdown. And that response that the nervous system wanted to have was numbed out, it was shut down. And so something I might do with somebody is we're doing inner child work, which is part of what we're doing. And say we're in a somatic process and things start coming up in their body, and it eventually leads to going into a memory they have of when I say something like, when is the first time that you felt repressed? And we go into it and they're feeling in the body, I might have them like get up and start doing motions like they're running and start giving that nervous system that chance to get that stuck survival stress out that was never able to be completed.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. So yeah, I used to teach these personal development courses for an international organization. I was in my 20s and we did, so it's tons of, it was like very Adlerian, Jungian Gestalt, which is a very strange combination, but it was like an Adlerian course that this guy created. And then my mentor and teacher was very Jungian. And so we changed it a little bit. But having everybody embody everything was the whole point. We're like, I need your nervous system. We're going to do it. Okay. Whatever it was. So sometimes it was reenacting something that happened. Like we're going to physically do it. Pick mom, pick dad. Who's the ex
Right.
who's the this, and who are you attracted to? You don't have your pick them. So we would always do the gestalt or the motion, and it was like insane the changes. And I was in my 20s when I was being taught this by this therapist on how to do this, and it was all the difference between you can sit there and talk about this till you're blue in the face, but until we taught women in a room how to stand up and push a man back with their eyes,
Yeah.
now they never were in fear of that rapist again because they learned to do something very different. And the men weren't lying about it. They were coming until they were like, okay, whatever she's got. And when a woman changed that whole nervous system, so she went from to this to, and it was a very different state, and it changed her physiology for life. So I love that you'll stop and do the embodiment and think about it. If you're listening to this, when's the last time your talk therapist did that with you? When did you stop the whole session, get up and do an embodiment? When did you? So some do. They will have you bang a pillow or punch. There is a little bit that's traditionally happened, but it's critical. So we do the reenactment of maybe what happened and we change it because you can change the story. And well, no, that we're going to change it. They're going to change what happened in 5. We're going to make a whole new story. Let's do it.
Yeah.
So that is exactly what it is. The nervous system didn't get to complete something. And it doesn't have to be abuse, though, too. I want to be clear.
Right.
Sometimes shit just happens. There's a fire in your house. Your mom and dad are grabbing you. They're trying to get you out. And fire, police, and things are there. And it's just, and your little body was like, I can't cry or shake right now. Nobody yelled at you. Nobody did anything. Yeah. You just didn't want to have any people see you cry at 7 because you were scared shitless. And your mom and dad could have been loving on you, but you contained it because you didn't want that. You didn't want to be weak or seem weird or whatever. It doesn't
Yeah.
take bad parenting to do a lot of these things. I tell something like, no, nobody told me that about myself. I did these things to myself. I made up my own little stories. I looked at things and made decisions. I always want people to remember that because it doesn't mean you had to have a bad childhood or any kind of crazy thing. And it's why you can have 4 kids have the same exact thing happen. Three are, it was a thing that happened, but their nervous system processed it, dealt with it, moved on. There's no trauma. One, boy, was it tough on that little kid's nervous system. It
Yep.
overwhelmed it. It's a trauma is a biological problem. It's a biological issue. It's like
Yep.
breaking a leg. That's all it is. Is the bone, how strong is that bone? The bigger kid's leg didn't break. The little kid's leg broke. That makes
Hmm.
perfect sense. Everybody understands a 15-year-old is stronger than the 5-year-old. Like they're not going to get damaged the same way. Nervous system is the same way. So a 15-year-old usually can handle more than a 5-year-old emotional
Hmm.
because you have more capacity. That's the hope. The mom and dad have more capacity than the children. You hope. But mom might be being treated for breast cancer, getting chemo and radiation. So she really doesn't have the more capacity than the 15-year-old kid at that moment.
Yep.
That can happen, right? She's not a bad person. She's sick because it's a
Hmm.
real energy problem. It's a physical, biological problem. It's not your mind. It's not a,
Yeah.
it's not a thinking issue.
Yep.
It's no different than breaking a leg to me.
Hmm.
That's how I look at it. So no, it just wasn't set right. And so it didn't heal quite right. So we're just going to remodel the way it healed. That's how I try to explain to people so they can get rid of the stigma of thinking this is something they did wrong or
Right.
something somebody did to them, because that often gets them stuck in the victim martyr
Mhm.
thing. That whole story doesn't help any of us.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. And something I say a lot is no one's to blame
yeah,
and everyone's to blame
yeah,
because it's also a societal problem. It's
yeah.
also even just the way that from birth, most children are taught not to feel. Even in a very gentle example of a little kid falls off their bike and they're wailing and crying. And one of the first things a parent will say is, "You're okay." And you're automatically like quieting that child's natural response. You're automatically saying, "You're okay." The kid's not okay. The kid's hurt. The kid's crying. Like instead, allowing that, just allow it to happen. The adults have to take care of their own nervous system response and not get all whacked out because their child's screaming and crying because they just fell. It's no, your child doesn't need to shh, 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 and
Right.
shush down. Let them express. They're hurt. Like it's all right.
Or
So we're
sometimes
so
there is,
taught.
are they hurt or are they just scared? That's you don't
Mhm.
actually know, and your job is to assess what is actually happening. Oh, okay, like let's go now. If you're like, okay, this is bad, I gotta actually get in the thing.
Yeah.
This is a surgical moment. What is
Mhm.
it? So there is a difference, and you're right. The way the parents respond, it's a huge thing, and no one's meaning to be doing anything, no
Right.
one's meaning to be hurtful or whatever. And a parent's, oh, nothing's wrong with you physically, so I think you're fine. Stop. You're okay, but it's actually the fear response because the kid has no idea if they're fine yet because they're so not feeling it. And so let's check it. Oh, I am fine. And they realize they don't even hurt. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes,
Yeah.
are you in pain? No. Oh, okay. So why are you crying?
Mhm.
I don't know. I was just, you scared? Not anymore. Okay. I remember having that conversation with my
Right.
son once when he was little. That's a lot. And then he just realized I'm crying over nothing. I'm like, oh, are
Mhm.
you sure? You want to cry some more? No. Do you hurt?
Mhm.
No. You still scared? No. But it was just a reflexive explosion because he figured I'm gonna be hurt.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
That is that. So that was a perfect example. And no one's being malicious. We do
Right.
it a lot. We do it to ourselves all the time. And I shouldn't be upset over this. I'm angry at my boss or I'm angry at him for my husband, but then they just try to whatever.
Stuff
And it's
it.
yeah, and it's in the non-expression that you said that you might make these other choices that aren't actually really healthy, like numbing out with the Netflix or the alcohol or the Oreos and ice cream or something like that, because it catches up with you. That's what I
Yeah.
want people to understand. So I try to teach them that the body is always talking to them. I
Yeah.
personify everything really well, and we just have to learn the language so they don't think something's wrong with me all the time. So it sounds like obviously you're doing a lot of the same thing. And so why don't you tell them, because I know it's really interesting. You're similar to me-ish, that you do virtual, you take clients
Mhm.
remotely, and you also do in-person retreats at times. So if people want to know how to work with you, so it's women, kind of like, this is who I like, this is what I'm really good at, this is how you would get in touch with me. 'Cause I know you do like a 6-week program.
Mhm.
And I like that. I want people to understand that this is a process. I do the same thing. I need commitment. This is never a
Yeah.
1-2 time magical. And I think we were talking off camera about it, like some of the big bang explosive things like the psychedelic community, people are getting the idea like they can just go have some explosive experience
Mm.
and not do any integration or understand that like you're missing. This is really all you've been describing to me, is that we're helping people integrate back into their bodies and their nervous system, completion. I like that phrase. I don't actually
Mhm.
use it like that. I like the way you said. I think that's really, it's just completion of a process we
Mm.
need to do. So I love that. Actually, that's a beautiful way to say it.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell them what working with you looks like?
Yeah, so the main way I work with women is through my 6-week one-to-one program, Reclaim Your Power, Turn Your Chaos into Radiance. And it's a one-to-one immersive. So it's not just like we're meeting once a week. It's like you're working on something every single day for this 6 weeks. And I'm tailoring specific somatic and nervous system exercises specific to you, what you've been through, your story, where your nervous system is at. So that's the main way. I also have in-person international retreats and workshops. So the easiest way is you can find my Instagram, which is simply I am Danielle Rubio. And there in the link in bio is all the links to all the different ways that you can work with me.
Awesome. And we'll make sure we drop everything down because not everybody is on Instagram. I always find that I have a pretty big percentage of my following and students in my courses, they're 70 and up.
Mm.
Interesting thing that I've attracted the 65 and up crowd in the last few years. And they're like, I'm not on Instagram. And it gets hard because I do so much there. I'm like, oh, so I make sure we like get it and download it and put it some other
Yeah.
way so they can handle Facebook groups and YouTube.
Uh-huh.
Really.
Yeah. I'm
So
also
this,
on Facebook, so I'll give you that link. Yeah.
yeah, we'll have everything. This, if you're watching on YouTube, it'll be there. If you're watching Instagram Reels or whatever, how you're watching this, we'll have all of it there so they can get a hold of you. Because it's really important. I think just constantly getting the message that there's no mistake. Your body is talking to you. It's not disordered and dysregulated. And I really do. I've never explained it that way, even though I know it, that you're just finishing a process that you started that was interrupted. I
Yeah.
think that's just, I think you just gave me a whole new way to explain this that'll make it less intimidating for
Yeah.
people. That's all.
Yep.
Oh, yeah. Like you were in the middle of something and you got they knocked you off your bike, you got distracted, you had to go the other way, but I just want to take you back on that road and we're going to go all the
Yeah.
way to the end of the corner. We just didn't get there. I think people can understand that. So I appreciate that learning for me. And yeah, I am Danielle Rubio. We'll make sure everything's in the description. So thank you so much for
Great.
what you do. It's not
Yeah.
easy to do this work, but I know it's incredibly rewarding.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on and thank you for everything that you're doing in the world too.